The beer bottle slips from my wet hands and crashes against the concrete floor of my garage, sending amber liquid and glass fragments across the oil-stained surface. The sound echoes off the walls, cutting through the noise of the backyard barbecue I'd spent all morning preparing. Suddenly, 24 faces turn toward me as I stand there in my soaked t-shirt, my hands dripping with beer foam, surrounded by the wreckage of my clumsiness. Brenda Sue doesn't miss a beat. My sister-in-law's perfectly styled blonde hair catches the afternoon light as she turns to face our guests, her voice carrying that particular mix of fake concern and genuine condescension that makes my stomach turn. "Oh, honey, look at you," she calls out, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You're making such a mess. Good thing we have our little Mary around to clean up after everyone." She gestures toward me with a dismissive wave. "She just can't help herself, can you, Mary? Always bustling around, picking up after folks like she was born to it." The neighbors shift uncomfortably on their folding chairs, unsure whether to laugh or pretend they didn't hear. But Brenda Sue isn't finished. She turns back to her audience with theatrical sympathy, the kind that makes you want to disappear into the ground. I keep telling her she doesn't need to wait on everyone hand and foot, but Mary just insists on playing the hired help at her own parties. It's like she doesn't know any other way to be useful. The silence that follows feels like it lasts forever. Heat crawls up my neck, but it's not embarrassment burning in my chest, it's something far more dangerous. Something I've been choking down for 2.5 years, ever since Brenda Sue and my brother Jimmy moved into the converted garage apartment on my property after Jimmy lost his job at the rail yard. Let me step back and explain how I got here. My name is Mary Ellen Patterson, and I'm 43 years old. I've lived in Marceline my entire life, just like my parents and their parents before them. After high school, I worked at the bank downtown for 15 years, saving every penny I could while living in a tiny apartment above Miller's hardware store. When old Mrs. Foster decided to sell her place on Elm Street, a beautiful Victorian house with a detached garage apartment, I jumped at the chance to buy it. The house needed work, but I didn't mind. I spent evenings and weekends stripping wallpaper, refinishing hardwood floors, and learning to fix things myself through YouTube videos and advice from neighbors. After 3 years of renovations, I had created something I was truly proud of, a home that reflected my hard work and determination. When Jimmy got laid off from the Missouri Northern Railroad, he and Brenda Sue were facing eviction from their rental house. Jimmy had been struggling with depression and drinking since losing his job, and Brenda Sue was pregnant with their second child. Despite our complicated history, I couldn't let my brother's family become homeless. I offered them the garage apartment temporarily, thinking it would be a few months at most until Jimmy found new work. The space was small but functional, a bedroom, a tiny kitchen, and living area that I'd originally planned to use as a craft room. It seemed like the perfect solution for everyone. That was 2.5 years ago. What started as temporary help had somehow become a permanent arrangement. Jimmy eventually found part-time work at the grain elevator, but his wages barely covered their groceries and gas. Brenda Sue, who had never worked outside the home, seemed to view my generosity as her due rather than a favor. She'd taken to referring to my house as our place and making decisions about my property without consulting me. Today's barbecue was supposed to be a celebration of my promotion to assistant manager at Marceline Community Bank, a position I'd worked toward for years. I'd planned everything carefully, bought the meat, prepared the sides, cleaned the house, and set up tables in the backyard. Brenda Sue had insisted on helping with the hosting duties, which apparently meant taking credit for my work while treating me like the help. Standing in my garage, soaked in beer and surrounded by broken glass, I finally understand that something has to change. The humiliation burns, but what hurts more is the realization that I've allowed this dynamic to continue for so long. I grab a broom and dustpan from the corner, sweeping up the glass while my guests pretend to resume their conversations. Through the open garage door, I can see Brenda Sue holding court by the picnic table, no doubt spinning some story about my accident to anyone who'll listen. As I dump the glass into the trash, I notice something I'd forgotten about, a manila envelope tucked behind some paint cans on the workbench. I'd hidden it there 3 weeks ago after meeting with Patricia Williams, the lawyer who'd helped me with my house purchase. The envelope contains information that changes everything about my relationship with Brenda Sue, information I'd been too shocked to process at the time. Now, Standing in my garage with beer stains on my shirt and the echo of Brenda Sue's humiliation ringing in my ears, I finally feel ready to open it again. 3 weeks earlier, I'd finally decided to formalize the living arrangement with Jimmy and Brenda Sue. What had started as a casual favor needed proper documentation, especially since I was claiming them as tenants on my homeowner's insurance. I'd asked Patricia Williams to draft a simple rental agreement that would protect everyone legally while keeping things family-friendly. Patricia had been my lawyer since I bought the house, and she'd always been straightforward with me. A Marceline native herself, she understood the complexities of small-town family dynamics better than most. When I explained what I needed, she'd seemed hesitant in a way that made me uncomfortable. "Mary, before I draft anything, I need to run some standard background checks," she'd said, her fingers drumming nervously on her desk. "It's just routine for rental agreements, but given that this is family, I want to make sure we're all protected." I'd assumed she meant credit checks and employment verification, standard stuff for any rental situation. I certainly hadn't expected her to call me back 3 days later with a tone I'd never heard from her before. "Mary, I need you to come in as soon as possible. There are some things about Brenda Sue's background that you need to know." The meeting had been one of the most uncomfortable hours of my life. Patricia had spread documents across her desk with the careful precision of someone delivering bad news. Court records, financial statements, and legal filings painted a picture of Brenda Sue's life before Jimmy that I'd never imagined possible. "She's been married twice before," Patricia had explained, her voice gentle but firm. "The first marriage ended when she was found guilty of forging her husband's signature on loan applications. She received probation and community service, but the financial damage to her ex-husband was significant." I'd stared at the court documents, trying to process what I was reading. The legal language was dense, but the basic facts were clear. Brenda Sue had systematically drained her first husband's bank accounts and credit lines before disappearing with their joint assets. The second marriage was shorter, Patricia continued, but it ended with a restraining order. Her husband's elderly mother had been living with them, and there were allegations that Brenda Sue had been forging checks from the woman's Social Security payments. The room had felt like it was spinning. Does Jimmy know any of this? I doubt it. She's very good at compartmentalizing her past. The name changes, the moves between states, it's a pattern designed to hide her history from new relationships. Patricia had handed me another folder, this one containing more recent information. "Mary, I also need to tell you about what I found regarding your current situation." The second folder had been even more disturbing. Over the past year, Brenda Sue had been using my address and property information to establish credit in ways that put me at financial risk. She'd applied for store credit cards listing herself as a property manager for my address. She'd contacted contractors about work on my house, authorizing estimates and in some cases small jobs that she claimed I'd approved. "She's been telling people she's your business partner," Patricia had said. "Several local contractors have invoices that she approved, claiming you'd handle payment." The total amount of unauthorized expenses was staggering, nearly $15,000 in charges that I'd never agreed to. Landscaping work, appliance repairs, even a complete bathroom renovation in the garage apartment that I'd assumed Jimmy had paid for himself. How was this possible? I'd asked, though I was beginning to understand the answer. "You've been generous with them, Mary. You've covered their utilities, their groceries when times were tight, small repairs and improvements. Brenda Sue has been using that generosity as evidence that you're financially responsible for their living situation. To outsiders, it looks like a partnership rather than charity." I'd left Patricia's office in a daze, the folders tucked under my arm like evidence of my own naivety. I'd spent the past 3 weeks trying to decide what to do with the information, telling myself that maybe there was some explanation, some misunderstanding that could be cleared up with a simple conversation. But standing in my garage, humiliated in front of my neighbors and friends, I finally understand that there's no misunderstanding. Brenda Sue knows exactly what she's doing, and she's been doing it to me for over 2 years. The morning after the barbecue, I call in sick to work and drive to Springfield to meet with a private investigator that Patricia had recommended. Janet Murphy runs a small firm that specializes in financial fraud cases, and she'd agreed to help me understand the full scope of what Brenda Sue had been doing. Janet's office is in a nondescript building near the courthouse, And she herself is nothing like the private investigators I'd imagine from television shows. She's a middle-aged woman with graying hair and sensible shoes, more like a favorite aunt than a detective. But when she spreads out the information she's gathered about Brenda Sue, I realize she's been thorough in ways that both impress and terrify me. Your sister-in-law has been busy, Janet says, opening a folder that's easily twice as thick as what Patricia had shown me. The credit applications are just the beginning. Over the next 2 hours, Janet walks me through a comprehensive picture of Brenda Sue's activities. She's been using my property as collateral for loans I never knew about. She's established herself as my property manager with several local businesses, negotiating services and extended payment terms that put me at financial risk. Most disturbing, she's been spreading rumors throughout Marceline that I'm planning to deed the property to her and Jimmy as a family gift. She's been very strategic about it, Janet explains. She's created a paper trail that makes it look like you're gradually transferring ownership to them. If she's successful, she could potentially make a legal claim to your property based on what's called constructive ownership. The phrase sends a chill down my spine. What does that mean? It means that if she can prove she's been managing your property with your knowledge and consent, making improvements and financial decisions, she might be able to argue that you intended to give them ownership rights. It's a long shot, but I've seen similar cases succeed when the property owner was elderly or vulnerable. I think about all the times I let Brenda Sue make decisions about repairs or improvements, thinking I was being helpful and family-minded. Every time I'd agreed to let her handle a contractor or approve a small expense, I'd been unknowingly building her case. There's more, Janet continues. She's been in contact with a lawyer in Kansas City about your property. I don't know what she's told him, but she's definitely been seeking legal advice about property rights. The betrayal hits me like a physical blow. While I'd been trying to be a good sister-in-law, providing free housing and financial support, Brenda Sue had been plotting to take my house away from me. What can I do? I ask, though I'm not sure I want to hear the answer. Legally, you have several options. You can evict them. They're month-to-month tenants with no written lease, so you only need to give 30 days' notice. You can pursue civil charges for fraud and theft of services. If the dollar amount is high enough, you might even be able to press criminal charges. Janet leans back in her chair, her expression sympathetic. But Mary, I need to be honest with you. This is going to get ugly. Brenda Sue isn't going to go quietly, and your brother is going to be caught in the middle. Family disputes like this can destroy relationships permanently. I drive home from Springfield with Janet's words echoing in my head. The folder of evidence sits on my passenger seat like a loaded weapon. I have the power to end this situation, but using it will mean destroying my relationship with Jimmy and potentially breaking up his family. As I pull into my driveway, I see Brenda Sue in the backyard, hanging laundry on a line she'd installed without asking my permission. She waves cheerfully, as if yesterday's humiliation had never happened. The casual dismissal of my feelings makes my decision easier. I'm done being the family doormat. I spend the next week carefully planning my response. I document everything, take photos of all the unauthorized work Brenda Sue has commissioned, gather receipts and contracts, compile a complete record of their 2.5-year stay on my property. I make copies of all the financial records Patricia and Janet have gathered, organizing them into a clear timeline of fraud and deception. Most importantly, I prepare Jimmy. I wait until Thursday evening when Brenda Sue takes the kids to her sister's house in Brookfield for their weekly visit. Jimmy is in the garage apartment, drinking a beer and watching a Cardinals game on their small television. He looks older than his 35 years, worn down by unemployment and the stress of supporting a family on part-time wages. Jimmy, I need to talk to you about something important. He mutes the television and gestures for me to sit on their small couch. The apartment is cramped but clean, decorated with Brenda Sue's collection of ceramic figurines and family photos. Looking around, I can see how they've made this temporary space into a home, which makes what I have to do even harder. I've been having some legal work done on the property. I begin carefully, making sure everything is documented properly for insurance and tax purposes. Jimmy nods, assuming this is some boring administrative task. That sounds smart. Thanks for letting us stay here while we get back on our feet. Jimmy, in the process of getting things documented, some information came to light about Brenda Sue's financial activities. The change in his expression is immediate. The relaxed posture disappears, replaced by the tense wariness of someone who's been expecting bad news. What kind of information? I hand him one of the folders Janet had prepared, the one containing just the most recent financial irregularities. She's been using my property and our arrangement to establish credit and authorize work without my knowledge. Jimmy opens the folder and begins reading, his face growing paler with each page. When he reaches the contractor invoices, he looks up at me with confusion and something that might be fear. I don't understand. She told me you'd approve this work. The bathroom renovation, the landscaping, she said it was your idea. I never approved any of this. I never even knew about it until my lawyer found the paperwork. Jimmy continues reading, his hands shaking slightly. When he reaches the credit applications, he sets the folder down and rubs his face with both hands. This is bad, isn't it? It's worse than bad, Jimmy. She's committed fraud, and she's put both of us at financial risk. I watch my brother process this information, seeing the exact moment when understanding hits him. His shoulders sag, and he looks at me with the expression of someone whose world has just collapsed. There's more, I say gently, and hand him the second folder containing information about Brenda Sue's previous marriages and criminal history. Jimmy reads in silence for several minutes. When he finally looks up, his eyes are red with unshed tears. She lied to me about everything. Her first husband, the reason she moved to Missouri, even her maiden name. Everything. I'm sorry, Jimmy. I know this is hard to hear. What are you going to do? The question hangs between us like a challenge. I can see that he already knows the answer, but he needs to hear me say it. I have to protect myself legally. That means formal eviction proceedings and possibly criminal charges. Jimmy nods slowly, the fight going out of him completely. I understand. I'm sorry, Mary. I should have known something was wrong. The way she talked about your house like it was ours, the way she made plans without asking you first. I thought she was just being enthusiastic about having a real home. You couldn't have known. She's very good at manipulation. When do we have to leave? 30 days from when I serve the notice. Jimmy stands up and walks to the window overlooking my backyard. I got a call back from the railroad. They're hiring again, full-time positions. I was going to surprise her with the news when she got back from Brookfield. That's wonderful, Jimmy. This job situation will help you get back on your feet. Will it? He turns back to me. When this all comes out, when people find out what she's done, what she's been doing to you while you were helping us, he shakes his head. I don't think I can stay in Marceline after this. The thought of Jimmy leaving town hurts more than I expected. Despite everything, he's still my brother, and I don't want to lose him because of his wife's actions. You don't have to leave because of this. Yes, I do. After what she's done to you, after the way she's treated you, I can't just pretend things can go back to normal. We sit in silence for a while, both of us processing the end of our family relationship as we've known it. Finally, Jimmy speaks again. I'll handle telling her about the eviction. You don't have to confront her directly. Actually, I do. This isn't something you can smooth over or manage for her. She needs to understand that actions have consequences. Jimmy nods reluctantly. When? Tomorrow. She's planning another gathering for Sunday, some kind of housewarming party for the apartment. She sent invitations to half the neighborhood without asking me. A housewarming party? For the apartment she's been telling people she owns. Jimmy's face goes white. She's been saying she owns it? Among other things. She's been very creative about her version of our living arrangement. Jesus Christ, Mary. What has she done? I stand up to leave, giving him time to process everything I've told him. Jimmy, I want you to know that you're welcome to stay in touch after this is over. You're my brother, and I love you. But I can't have Brenda Sue in my life anymore. I understand. And Mary? Thank you for letting us stay here as long as you did. I know we took advantage of your kindness. You didn't take advantage. She did. As I walk back to my house, I feel a strange mixture of sadness and relief. Tomorrow I'll confront Brenda Sue, but tonight I can sleep knowing that Jimmy understands what's happening and why it has to end this way. Sunday arrives with unseasonably warm weather for October, perfect for the outdoor gathering Brenda Sue has planned. I watch from my kitchen window as she sets up tables in my backyard, arranges flowers she's picked from my garden, and prepares to welcome guests to what she's been calling her housewarming party. The irony isn't lost on me. She's celebrating making my property her home at the exact moment I'm about to take it away from her. I've dressed carefully for the occasion, a simple blue dress and the pearl necklace my mother left me. I want to look respectable and composed when I serve the papers. In my purse, I carry 2 envelopes, the eviction notice and the civil lawsuit that Patricia filed on Friday. About 20 people show up throughout the afternoon, neighbors, some of Brenda Sue's friends from town, and a few people I don't recognize. Brenda Sue plays hostess with enthusiasm, showing people around the garage apartment and talking about her plans for future improvements. I circulate among the guests, playing the role of gracious homeowner while listening to conversations that make my blood pressure rise. Brenda Sue has been telling people that I'm planning to deed the property to her and Jimmy as a family gift. She's described me as a lonely spinster who's grateful for their company and help around the house. Mary's been so generous. I hear her telling Mrs. Johnson from down the street. She really needs us here to help her maintain this big place. At her age, it's getting to be too much for her to handle alone. The condescension in her voice is breathtaking. I'm 43 years old, hardly ancient, and I've been maintaining this property single-handedly for years. But I bite my tongue and wait for the right moment. That moment comes around 4 o'clock, when most of the guests have arrived and Brenda Sue calls for everyone's attention. She's standing by the garage apartment, a glass of wine in her hand, looking like the lady of the manor. I want to thank everyone for coming to help us celebrate our new home, she begins, her voice carrying across the yard. Jimmy and I feel so blessed to have found our place here on Elm Street, and we're excited to share our plans for the future. She gestures toward the apartment with obvious pride. We're hoping to expand the living space next year, maybe add a proper kitchen and another bedroom. Mary's been so supportive of our vision for this place. The words hang in the air like a challenge. I can feel the neighbors looking at me expectantly, waiting for me to add to Brenda Sue's announcement. This is my moment. I walk to the center of the gathering, pulling the envelopes from my purse. Actually, Brenda Sue, I have something to share with everyone too. Her smile falters slightly, but she maintains her composure. Of course, Mary. What is it? I have some documents for you. I hand her the first envelope. This is a 30-day eviction notice. The silence that follows is absolute. Brenda Sue takes the envelope with trembling hands, her face cycling through confusion, shock, and then something like panic as she realizes what's happening. This is a joke, right? She says, but her voice lacks conviction. It's not a joke. You have 30 days to vacate the premises. The crowd around us has gone completely silent. I can feel their eyes shifting between me and Brenda Sue, trying to understand what's happening. You can't be serious, Brenda Sue says, her voice rising. This is Jimmy's home too. We've been living here for over 2 years. As my tenants who have violated their agreement and engaged in fraudulent activities. I hand her the second envelope. This is a civil lawsuit for fraud, theft of services, and unauthorized use of my property for financial gain. Brenda Sue stares at the documents as if they might disappear. Around us, the guests are beginning to whisper among themselves, the festive atmosphere completely shattered. This is insane, Brenda Sue whispers. Mary, you can't do this. We're family. Family doesn't commit fraud against family. I haven't done anything wrong. I've been helping you manage this place, making improvements, handling contractors, without my knowledge or consent, using my property as collateral for credit applications, telling people you own property that belongs to me. The crowd is fully engaged now, listening to every word with the fascination of people witnessing a public meltdown. I can see some of them beginning to understand the real nature of our living arrangement. You're all seeing this, right? Brenda Sue appeals to the crowd. She's throwing out family. After everything we've done for her. Mrs. Johnson steps forward, her expression stern. Brenda Sue, dear, maybe you should go inside and discuss this privately. No. Brenda Sue's voice is shrill now. I won't be treated like this. Mary, you can't just. Actually, I can. I turn to address the guests directly. I want to apologize to everyone for this scene. As you can see, there's been a misunderstanding about the living arrangement here that needed to be clarified. Misunderstanding. Brenda Sue's voice cracks. You're destroying our family over money. I'm protecting myself from fraud. There's a difference. Jimmy chooses this moment to appear from the garage apartment, drawn by the commotion. He takes in the scene, his wife holding legal documents, the shocked faces of the neighbors, and my calm but determined expression, and immediately understands what's happening. Brenda Sue, come inside, he says quietly. No, I won't let her do this to us. She's not doing anything to us. You did this to yourself. The admission hangs in the air like a confession. Some of the guests begin to murmur, and I can see understanding dawning on several faces. Jimmy, Brenda Sue turns to him desperately. You can't let her throw us out. This is our home. No, it's not. It's Mary's home. It's always been Mary's home. But I've put work into this place. I've made improvements. Unauthorized improvements, I interject, using my credit and property without permission. That's not true. You knew about the work. I have documentation proving otherwise. The fight seems to go out of Brenda Sue all at once. She looks around at the faces of the neighbors, searching for support or sympathy, but finds only uncomfortable silence and dawning judgment. This isn't over, she says quietly, but there's no conviction in her voice. Yes, it is. The next morning, I find Jimmy loading boxes into a borrowed pickup truck while Brenda Sue sits in the apartment, alternating between crying and making angry phone calls to anyone who will listen. She's reached out to several people in town, trying to rally support for her version of events, but the story is already spreading through Marceline's gossip network with remarkable speed. Janet Murphy had warned me that small-town dynamics would work both for and against me in this situation. People would be quick to judge, but they'd also be quick to protect one of their own if they felt I was being unfairly treated. So far, the response has been more supportive than I expected. Mrs. Johnson stopped by yesterday evening with a casserole and some gentle questions about what had really been happening. After I explained the situation, she nodded with the understanding of someone who'd suspected something was wrong but hadn't wanted to interfere. I always wondered about her, she admitted. The way she talked about your property like it was hers, the way she made decisions without seeming to consult you. It didn't seem right. Other neighbors have been similarly supportive. The general consensus seems to be that Brenda Sue had overstepped in ways that made everyone uncomfortable, and that I'd been too generous for too long. Jimmy approaches me as I'm checking the mail, looking haggard and older than his years. Mary, I need to apologize again. Not just for what Brenda Sue did, but for my part in letting it happen. You didn't know what she was doing. I should have. I should have questioned how she was able to authorize work on your property, how she seemed to know so much about your finances, the way she talked about our living situation. I was so grateful for your help that I didn't want to look too closely at anything that might threaten it. I can see the pain in his eyes, and it hurts to know that my actions are causing him suffering. But I also know that enabling his wife's behavior would have been worse for everyone in the long run. What will you do now? I got the railroad job. Full-time, with benefits. We'll find a place to rent until we can save up for something permanent. That's good news about the job. Jimmy nods, but there's no enthusiasm in his expression. Mary, I need to ask you something. Are you going to press criminal charges? I've been struggling with this decision for days. The fraud charges would be serious, potentially resulting in jail time for Brenda Sue. While part of me wants to see her face consequences for her actions, another part of me worries about the impact on Jimmy and their children. I don't know yet. It depends on whether she continues to cause problems. She's been calling that lawyer in Kansas City, trying to find a way to fight the eviction. Patricia says she doesn't have legal grounds to contest it. I know, but she's not thinking clearly right now. She's desperate, and desperate people do stupid things. As if summoned by our conversation, Brenda Sue appears in the doorway of the garage apartment. She looks terrible, her hair unwashed, her clothes wrinkled, her eyes red and swollen from crying. Mary, I need to talk to you. Jimmy steps between us protectively. Brenda Sue, don't make this worse. I just want to explain. There's nothing to explain, I interrupt. You've committed fraud, and you've put my financial security at risk. We're past the point of explanations. But where will we go? The kids are settled in school here. Jimmy just got his job back. You should have thought about that before you started forging my signature on contracts. I never forged your signature. You authorized work on my property without my knowledge or consent. You used my property as collateral for credit applications. You told people you own property that belongs to me. If those aren't crimes, they're close enough to make no difference. Brenda Sue's face crumples, and for a moment I almost feel sorry for her. But then I remember the humiliation of being called the maid at my own party, the months of being treated like a servant in my own home, and the systematic way she'd been working to steal my property. I'm sorry, she whispers. I know I made mistakes, but I never meant to hurt you. You meant to take my house away from me. That's not true. I have documentation of your contacts with a lawyer about property rights. I know about the rumors you've been spreading about me deeding the property to you and Jimmy. I know about the credit applications and the contractor agreements and all of it. Brenda Sue stares at me with an expression of someone who's been caught in an elaborate lie. The fight goes out of her completely. I was just trying to make a home for my family. By stealing mine. Jimmy takes his wife's arm gently. Come on, Brenda Sue. Let's finish packing. As they disappear into the apartment, I feel a mixture of relief and sadness. In a few days, they'll be gone, and I'll have my property back. But I'll also have lost my relationship with Jimmy, and that knowledge sits like a stone in my chest. 3 weeks later, I'm hosting a small gathering in my backyard. A genuine celebration this time, to mark the end of the legal proceedings and the beginning of a new chapter in my life. The guest list is small but meaningful. Patricia Williams, Janet Murphy, a few close friends from work, and some neighbors who've been supportive throughout this ordeal. The contrast with Brenda Sue's housewarming party is stark. This time, I'm truly the host, serving food I've prepared myself and welcoming people I've chosen to invite. There's no pretense, no performance, just genuine hospitality offered freely. Patricia updates me on the legal resolution while we're cleaning up. Brenda Sue's lawyer in Kansas City dropped her case after reviewing the evidence. She's agreed to pay restitution for the unauthorized charges and to stop any further contact with contractors or businesses regarding your property. And the criminal charges? The prosecutor's office is still reviewing the case. Given the dollar amount involved, they're inclined to pursue it, but they're willing to consider a plea agreement if she makes full restitution and agrees to stay away from your property. I think I'd prefer the plea agreement. I just want this to be over. I understand. The main thing is that you're protected going forward. After the guests leave, I walk through my house in the quiet evening, appreciating the solitude in a way I haven't been able to for over 2 years. Every room is mine again. Every decision is mine to make. Every corner reflects my taste and my choices. The garage apartment stands empty now, cleaned and ready for whatever comes next. I've been considering several options: renting it to a carefully screened tenant, using it as a home office, or maybe converting it into a workshop for the woodworking hobby I've been wanting to pursue. Whatever I decide, it will be my choice, made without manipulation or pressure from anyone else. 6 months later, I'm sitting in my backyard on a warm spring evening, reading a book and enjoying the peace of my own space. The garage apartment has been converted into a workshop, and I've been learning to build furniture from online tutorials and weekend classes in Colombia. The legal situation has been resolved completely. Brenda Sue pleaded guilty to fraud charges and was sentenced to probation and community service. She's made partial restitution for the unauthorized charges, and I've recovered most of the money she cost me. More importantly, I've established clear legal boundaries that protect my property going forward. Jimmy and his family moved to Jefferson City, where he's working for Missouri Pacific Railroad, and they've bought a small house. We exchange Christmas cards and brief updates, but our relationship will never be the same. The betrayal cut too deep, and while I don't wish him ill, I can't pretend that things can go back to the way they were. The experience has changed me in ways I'm still discovering. I'm more cautious about extending help to others, but I'm also more confident in my ability to protect myself when necessary. I've learned that kindness without boundaries isn't really kindness at all. It's enabling behavior that ultimately hurts everyone involved. My neighbors have been surprisingly supportive throughout this entire ordeal. Mrs. Johnson stops by regularly to check on me, and several other neighbors have made it clear that they respect what I did and how I handled it. The general consensus in town seems to be that Brenda Sue got what she deserved, and that I was patient far longer than most people would have been. At work, my colleagues have been equally supportive. My promotion to assistant manager came through as scheduled, and I've been given additional responsibilities that both challenge and fulfill me. Thanks for listening to this powerful story. Subscribe for more stories about the surprising ways people change our lives for the better. See you in the next story.